visas. Again, thank you to everybody that joined. For those of you that were not here a minute ago, my name is Romy Jurado. I'm an attorney at Jurado and Farsian, and today I'm going to focus on investment visas. I understand that a lot of you are realtors, so I'm going to try to focus on why knowing about investment visas is important for the real estate community. As a preview, I want you all to know that there's a lot of misconceptions that immigration is closed right now, that people cannot come in, that you cannot use investment visas and so forth. That's not necessarily the case. To give you an example, the visa E2, which is the one that you process at the U.S. Embassy abroad, is completely operational, so you can apply for E2 visas and come in. The L1 visa is one that was affected until December 31st. But what we are doing right now is focusing on our clients' documentation so that as soon as that ban is lifted, we can submit our application. EB5 hasn't really been affected because it's not an immediate visa. It takes time, so we can still process those. And of course, family petitions and so forth, we're processing them and just playing along with whatever regulations are currently in place. Today, I'm going to focus on 3 visas, and I'm going to be sharing my screen with you as I go. These 3 visas are what's considered investment visas, and those are the ones that most people, when they're coming in by investment, can utilize to either obtain residency or be able to live here for 5 years and renew continuously and have their spouse work here and their kids go to school here. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, and Andrea will be able to read them to me, and then I'll be answering them as I go. So give me just 1 second. Let me share my screen. Okay, so as I mentioned, the 3 visas that I'm going to focus on today are the investment visa of L1, E2, and EB5. And if you have any questions at the end of my presentation, I'll look at the chat and I'll address them as I go. So as a real estate professional, why would you want to learn about investment visas? That's a question that I get asked often. These are the reasons why I think as a real estate professional, you should know about investment visas, because they will help you grow your business. So for example, clients will need workspace. Now, nowadays, as we know, everybody working remotely, you can work anywhere. You can work in the living room of your home. You can work at a restaurant. You don't really need brick and mortar. However, for immigration purposes, in order for an investment visa to be approved, they do want to see that you have brick and mortar. They will allow virtual offices in their limited circumstances, but most of the time they want to see, especially for the L1s, and if we do an EB5 with direct investment, they want to see a physical office space. Where are you going to house your employees? Now, we're going through a difficult time of COVID where a lot of our employees are not being housed in our office. However, for immigration purposes, you still have to say, this is my office, this is the licenses and permits that I have to operate my business out of this office, and my employees will be housed in this location. And that's where the realtor comes in. The realtor can help that client find office space or industrial space, like a warehouse and so forth. And a lot of times the client not only ends up renting that space, but a lot of times they also buy that space. So the realtor can help them buy the office, buy the warehouse, buy whatever space a client needs to house their business. So there again, as a realtor, you're able to make commission on that. Also, clients are going to need a place to live. Now, these are investment visas, so the people coming in here are people with investment money, and they don't just want to rent any little small apartment. They actually want to rent a nice place. Usually they rent a place temporarily because it takes maybe about 2 to 6 months, depending, to obtain the visa. So they'll rent something temporarily, like a short-term rental. And then as soon as the visa is approved, it's like clockwork. They obtain their social security number, and the first thing they do, they want to buy residential property. Where are they going to live with their spouse and their kids? So there again, you as a realtor can make commission by helping them find not only the place to live temporarily, but the place to actually live permanently now that they obtain their visa. Also, the business can be real estate. So you as a realtor can assist them in setting up a real estate business. Things that we have done before are, for example, buying and selling properties. That's the business. They buy, they bought 5 houses, they sold them. So buy and flip and make some money from that. That can be a real estate business. They can create a management company to manage real estate property. That also has to do with real estate, and you can help them find a property. So that's also real estate related business. We have clients that bought timeshares, and bought like 30 timeshares and that was their business to manage those timeshares. We have clients that were managing Airbnbs. We have clients that were managing hotels that they bought multifamilies and their business was managing those multifamilies. We have clients that bought shopping centers and their business was managing, taking care of those shopping centers. All those businesses have to deal with real estate, and there you as a realtor can help them find those properties and then of course make commission from that. Lastly, the business, the client can start a business, right? So I can set up their company, they go and start a business, whatever business they desire. Any business really works as long as you structure it appropriately and as long as it's a legal business. But the client can also buy an existing business, okay? And there you as a realtor business broker can assist the client in locating the business, analyzing the business, and then you are not the one, the difference between helping somebody buy a business and helping somebody buy a property is that when you help somebody buy a business, the brokers, the realtors are not the ones that are making the contract. I am. I also make the letter of intent. So because it's more complex, there are no forms. And as you know, as a realtor, you're not allowed to prepare documents for your clients unless there are forms. This is where I come in. I draft the letter of intent. I draft the contract. And then I also help the client negotiate the transfer of the lease and so forth. So I do also legal due diligence and documentation to transfer the business. And then if they want to work with a CPA to do the financial due diligence, they can do that as well. And you as a broker, realtor, business broker, all your job really entails is finding them the business. The client decides whether to buy the business or not based on the information that we provide them on the legal side and based on the information that the accountant provides them on the accounting side. But there again, for you helping them buy that business, you could also make commissions. So in those 4 instances that I laid out, it's how I see realtors, business brokers making money. Finding clients, finding them workspace, helping them rent it or buy it, helping clients find a living space, either renting it or buy it or both, and helping clients starting real estate business. They can start a real estate business or also buying an actual business, any other business. So all of those things are places where I see realtors become involved. Okay, so the L1 visa. The L1 visa is a non-immigrant visa with dual intent. It allows a foreign national in any country. So here we don't discriminate on countries. All countries can participate on this. It allows a foreign national who has an existing business in their country or who works for an existing business in their country, come to the United States and set up an office, a subsidiary of that business. And because they have an existing business abroad and they're going to set up a subsidiary of that business here, immigration allows them to come in under an L1 visa. That L1 visa is going to cover them, their spouse, and their children under 21. This visa is called the intercompany transferee. And basically it requires that one, the foreigner, has worked at a company abroad for 1 year out of the past 3 years. So that's important. Even if you are the owner of your company abroad, if you're not on payroll, you're not going to qualify for an L1 visa. So it's very important that you have worked for 1 year out of the past 3 years in the company abroad. Then that company decides, hey, guess what? Let's set up a business in the United States. And they send this executive or manager, and I'll explain what those means under immigration purposes, to set up that company in the United States, to set up a subsidiary in the United States. And then that person gets the L1 visa. Things that are important are to have that relationship between the foreign company and the US company. We need that relationship in order to qualify for the visa. So it cannot be 2 companies totally separate. It has to be a company abroad that has a relationship with the company in the United States. The relationship can be parent, subsidiary, affiliate, or branch. I like to do the parent relationship where the company abroad owns the company in the United States. It's cleaner and it's easier to explain to immigration. Then the person that comes in has to have worked for 1 year out of the past 3 years in the company abroad. How do we show that? Through payroll. Payroll from your company abroad showing that you work for that company. Then when you come in the United States, you have to show that abroad you were in an either executive manager or you're an employee with specialized knowledge. For immigration purposes, right, an executive is somebody that oversees other professionals. So abroad, what we would show is here is, let's say, Peter. Peter works in this real estate company and he oversees other professionals under him. So therefore, he's an executive in a very simple way. Of course, we go more into detail. We look at what Peter does or doesn't do, who the other professionals are, what degrees they have, and so forth. But immigration wants to see the hierarchy. They really want to see that. They want to see that you're a professional, that you're an executive. Or you could also be a manager. A manager for immigration purposes is somebody that manages a particular function. So for example, in this real estate company that we're using as an example, maybe you don't oversee other professionals, but you manage the marketing function, or you manage the sales function, where in the marketing function, you're overseeing not the employees within your company, but you're overseeing employees outside of your company, such as the media companies, independent contractors that may do work for you, develop commercials, depending on what your business is. You can still qualify at saying that you're a manager because you manage a function, or you manage the sales function. We've done that too, where maybe you don't oversee employees within your company, but you oversee independent contractors that work as your sales force. And then that could also work to qualify you as a manager. Lastly, we have somebody with specialized knowledge. So let's say that you're not an executive, you don't oversee other employees. You're not a manager because you're not in charge of a particular important function of the business, but you have this specialized knowledge that only you can do that same thing you do in that business abroad in the United States. If we can show that, then you can come in with specialized knowledge, okay? Now, for the business in the United States, also with the business abroad, it's very important to show that it has employees, because immigration doesn't want you to send your receptionist to come to the United States to be the executive. They don't want that. Or the cleaning crew, they don't want that. They want to send somebody that oversees other employees. And so there's your key. Even though the regulations don't say it, it is extremely important that the business abroad has at least, I would say, 8 employees. What type of employees? Hopefully at least are professional employees, meaning they have bachelor's degree. Even if they're working in another area, like maybe somebody has an engineering degree, but they're working in a accounting function, that's still gonna work under immigration purposes because it's still somebody that's a professional because they have a bachelor's degree. So we want to show that. Just like we show that abroad, we want to show that here in the United States. We want you to have a bachelor's degree in the United States, or I'm sorry, your employees to have a bachelor's degree in the United States. And the bachelor's degree does not have to be of this country. So you can start any business in the United States and hire people that have bachelor's degrees of other countries, but for immigration purposes, they're gonna be considered professionals under the regulations. So we're good. So abroad, to summarize, abroad we have a company. You have worked for that company for 1 year out of the past 3 years. You're overseeing other professionals, you're overseeing a function, or you have the specialized knowledge, right? You need to meet those requirements. Then you come to the United States, you set up a business or you buy a business, okay? Then again, you have employees in that business. You either oversee the employees or you oversee a particular function, or you're somebody with specialized knowledge. The company abroad and the business in the United States, they don't have to do the same thing. Examples that I have done before are, for example, abroad, my client was a lawyer and he ran a law firm. In the United States, he decided to open a child care center. Abroad, my client sold shoes. You know, they had different shoe stores. Here in the United States, they decided to open up a restaurant. Abroad, my client was in the construction industry. They were building buildings left and right. Here in the United States, they decided to put a real estate management company. That's okay. It doesn't matter that the businesses are not the same, as long as we show that the foreign company owns the US company. Also, we want to show that, that relationship and that you qualify as either an executive, a manager, or somebody with specialized knowledge. So why is this business so great, right? This visa is great because you can do this with as little as $100,000 investment. We have clients that have done it with less, but I usually recommend at least $100,000, okay? So we do the $100,000 investment. And then also this visa allows you to obtain residency. The way that it works is when we apply, they're gonna give you this visa for 1 year. So you're gonna get this visa for 1 year. Then you could apply for an extension and they're gonna extend it for an additional 2 years. After the 2 years, you can apply, not after, I apologize. After you get the extension approved, so we don't have to wait the 2 years, we just have to have the extension approved, that is when you can apply for residency. The residency part of it is called EB1. Okay, so L1 is the visa, non-immigrant one, but EB1 is the residency. So why can we apply for EB1 from the get-go? It would be fabulous, but we can't. Why? Because for you to apply for EB1, you need to have worked at a company abroad for 1 year out of the past 3 years. That company in the United States, that company sent you to the United States to set up the subsidiary, and you have worked for the company in the United States for 1 year as well. That's the reason why we cannot apply for EB1 residency from the beginning. We have to apply for L1, you come in, you work here for 1 year, and then we apply for EB1. The residency application, the processing time, it's probably going to take about 2 years, right? So the good thing is that as soon as we apply, as long as your kids are under 21, even if they become of age after we apply, they're still going to be included in residency. We actually had a particular case, excuse me. We had a particular case where we submitted the EB1 application, so the application for residency. It was received, not approved, we just need a receipt date, by immigration on Tuesday. Our client's son, the elder one, he turned 21 on Monday. I'm sorry, I apologize. He turned 21 on Wednesday. So the application was received on Tuesday and he turned 21 on Wednesday, and the receipt date had Tuesday's date. He was still included. He still became a permanent resident. So what I like to talk to clients about is if you have children that are 17, 18, and you're thinking about an investment visa, you want to do it as soon as possible, because you don't want for time to go by and not be able to apply for residency if that is, you know, your end goal, and have them not be part of your application. Once they turn 21, they're no longer going to be part of your application, and it's really sad to see families torn apart that way. So we don't want that. Also, you don't have to apply for residency. There are people that just want to be an L1 temporarily, you know, or maybe you're the owner of the business abroad, right? And you don't want to come here to set up the business yourself, but you want to say, we want to send your vice president. Of course, you don't want your vice president to leave abroad forever. So you send him here with an L1 visa for 3-4 years. And after that, he goes back to your country and that's it. The L1 visa you don't have to apply for residency. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. If you're an L1 the whole time, the maximum amount of years you can be in an L1 is 7 years. So that's also something you need to keep in mind, you know? So you can come in, let's say, and you're here for 1 year, 2 years, and then you're like, I don't know if I really want to be a resident because I don't know if I want to be here all that time. Okay, you can wait another 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But once you're already in the 5th or 6th year, we really have to get to it, because the maximum amount of time you can be here in an L1 is 7 years, and that's it. Okay, so it's important to keep that in mind. Okie dokie. E2 visa. E2 visa, it's a great visa. It allows foreign nationals to come to the United States and set up a business. It could be a startup, it could be an existing business, their choice. Now, this visa, it's not for everybody. I said the L1 was for everybody, the E2 visa is not for everybody. This visa allows people of certain nationalities. So what nationalities? Well, it requires that United States have a treaty with that country. When we end this webinar, I'm going to send everybody a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation and also with a couple of links that I think you will find useful. Included in those links, it's going to be a link to my website where I list all of the countries that have treaties with the United States, okay? So it's important to find a country that has a treaty with the United States, because that qualifies you for an E2 visa. Now, let's say you have a family of 4, right? Wife, husband, and kids. Only the wife has the nationality of the treaty. Can everybody else be included? Yes, no problem. As long as either the husband or the wife has the nationality of that treaty country, everybody's going to be included. And also, even if you never lived in that country, it's okay. You can still do it. You don't need to live in that country to be able to use that country for your treaty visa, as long as you have a passport from that country. So having residency of that country is not enough. You need to have citizenship, passport, and that is what qualifies you. To give you an example, because we do this a lot, this visa, let's see, Brazil doesn't have the treaty visa with the United States, but I have done a lot of Brazilian citizens. I have helped a lot of Brazilian citizens obtain E2s. Why? Because they were able to obtain Italian citizenship. Italy does have E2 visa treaty. So even though they never even visited Italy, as long as they have a passport from Italy, they're going to be able to use that for their E2 visa. Also, Peru, that's where I'm from, we don't have E2 treaty. I wish we did, we don't. But Colombia does, and Chile does, and Argentina does. So if you happen to be a Peruvian that managed to get citizenship from those countries, you would be able to use that for your E2 visa. A lot of the European countries have treaties with the United States, so they're going to qualify under E2 visa. And also the time, sometimes they get the length, I apologize, can be between 2 to 5 years. Mexico is one of those countries that when people would tell me I want to do E2 from Mexico, I would tell them, no, you know, they only give you a year, but that has changed. Now they give you 4 years. So Mexico, let's do it. You can do E2 visas. Argentina gets 5 years, Chile gets 5 years, Colombia gets 5 years. A lot of the European countries get 5 years. And it's a really great visa because you're able to come to the United States and without any business anywhere else, you can buy an existing business and obtain this visa. So what is the investment amount, right? People want to know, well, Romy, how much do I need money? How much money do I need? Okay, so there's no magic number. We usually advise clients to do $100,000, but it depends on the business. So for example, if you tell me, Romy, I want to set up a 5-star restaurant, you know, $100,000 is not enough. But if your business is, Romy, I want to set up a bakery, then $100,000 will be enough, right? So it depends on the type of business, and you can start one from scratch. So you can go rent the space, buy the equipment, get all the licenses and permits, hire the employees. You can do it, or you can buy an existing business, and you can work with a business broker that can assist you in buying the, you know, the business. And you guys, if some of you guys are business brokers out there, you can help the clients buy the business. Now, a lot of the questions that I'm asked is, Romy, but this business they want to buy, it only has, you know, 1 employee. How many employees do I need to apply for an E2 visa? I advise the client to have at least 2 employees before we apply. Why? Because this visa, immigration wants to see that your visa, your business, it's something called not marginal. A marginal business for immigration purposes is a business that only makes enough money to support the investor and the investor's family. So if the business only makes enough money to support the investors and the investor's family, immigration doesn't want that. It's a marginal business and it's not going to work. So we want to show immigration, hey, guess what, immigration? We're creating jobs. We have 2 employees, 3 employees before we apply. And then it's going to be, you know, you're in a better position. So it's very important to do that. Again, the investment amount, we usually advise $100,000, but it depends on the size, the type of the business, right? So if it's a business that requires more investment, then of course, $100,000 is not going to be enough. So it depends on that. As far as ownership, okay, so for an E2 visa, you should own 51%. You don't need to own 100% of the business, but you should own at least 51% if you're coming in as the investor. But there is this area of immigration law that allows for 2 investors to come in and use the same business and both obtain E2 visas for themselves and their families, okay? So we can do that as well. So let's say you have 2 Chilean nationals and they're both partners abroad or they're friends or whatever, and they're like, let's set up a restaurant. Well, they can both come in, we set up the company as having them both as owners. They each need to own 50-50, and then each of them can get the E2 visa for themselves and their families. That's the only thing that it's allowed. You cannot have 3 investors, each owning 33. It's not going to work, okay? But 2 owning 50-50, that will work. Okay, let's see. So real quickly, what is investment for immigration purposes? The way that it's gonna work for these visas is the client is going to hire us to set up their US company, whether it's owned by their foreign company for an L1 visa or it's owned individually by them for their E2 visa. We're gonna set it up, we're gonna obtain that company's tax ID, we're gonna do all the corporate documents, and then we're gonna tell the client it's time for you to open up a business bank account for the company that we set up. The client needs to set up that business bank account. Once the business bank account is set up, then the money, the investment money has to come into that bank account. For the L1 visa, it comes from the foreign company. For the E2 visa, it comes from the person's own funds, from their personal account. Once the money come in, it's not invested yet because now you have to use it for the business. So if you're buying a business, well, that money's gonna come in to pay the seller. If you're starting a business from scratch, you need to use that money to pay for rent, marketing expenses, website, equipment, inventory, whatever you need for your business. We cannot apply to immigration until you have invested the money, meaning money came in and it was used for immigration purposes, okay? So it's very important to keep that in mind. It's not enough with just having the money in the bank. Money in the bank, it's not investment for immigration purposes. That money has to be used for the business. Now, you cannot use that money to buy yourself a fabulous apartment that's not an apartment of the business, unless your business is real estate, right? If your business is real estate, then we can structure something appropriately. But if you're buying a restaurant and then you want to buy an apartment, you can do it, but the apartment is not going to be considered investment. It's very important to keep that in mind. So E2 visa, we have to show where did you get this money? Immigration doesn't want to see that money was obtained that you got through criminal purposes, that you never declared, that came from under your couch. They don't want that. So I'm going to ask the E2 investor, please give me a financial statement. Please give me your personal bank accounts. Show me your tax returns. How did you come about this money? It's very important, because if you are not able to show how you got this money, you cannot use this money for investment visa purposes. Okay, so it's a question that I ask the client when starting, and it's a weird question, right? I'm like, hey, where did you get your money? But if you don't want to tell me and you cannot tell me, then we cannot tell immigration, then there's no point in applying, because they're going to ask, where did you get your money? The length of stay, again, it can be between 2 to 5 years. Usually, most of the time, it's 5 years, 4 years, and we will tell you that because it depends on the country that you're from. So if you're, for example, well, Mexico used to be 1 year, now it's 4 years. So we look that up once we apply or before we apply, and we let the client know, listen, it's going to be this amount of time or this amount of time. Now, you can renew this visa indefinitely. We have clients that we help renew the visa, and they have been renewing for 30 years. Of course, I wasn't the one that did the original application, but I'm helping them with the renewal. So as long as your business is going forward, you can renew the E2 visa. Now, you cannot sell the business. Be careful with that, because once you don't have a business, you don't have a visa. Okay, so it's very important. A lot of clients ask sometimes, well, Romy, will this lead to residency? Now, E2 visa is a non-immigrant visa, means you don't have the intent to live here permanently. It's only for 5 years, 4 years, depending, or you can keep on renewing for 30 years. However, I'm going to share with you some examples of things that I have seen happen where the person was able to convert this into residency. Okay, so one example is husband comes in with the wife. Husband works in the E2 business, but the wife goes and works for whatever other company. The wife does such a fabulous job in the other company that they like her and they want to sponsor her through something called PERM, which is an application for the employee to come and work for you permanently as a permanent resident. So the company does that. The wife is able to obtain permanent residency, and with that also is the husband and all her kids. So that's one way. The wife wouldn't have gotten the chance to go work for that company had she not been able to obtain E2 visa through the E2 visa investment of the husband. So it works out. Another example is, and it has to do with EB5. Let's say that you came in and you set up a chain of restaurants, right? And you invested 400,000. Well, that's not enough for EB5, because now the numbers just went up and you need 900,000. But you set up and you did this for 400,000, and a year from that time, you're able to come up to 900,000. Well, now you already have your E2 visa, you're here, and we could apply for EB5 using that same business, because you now completed the investment amount of $900,000. And let's say that you only have 7 employees. Well, you plan to employ 3 more to meet the threshold amount of 10 employees, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. Now you're able to convert that E2 visa into EB5 and become a permanent resident. So those are ways that I have seen where my clients come in with an E2 visa, and even though the E2 itself doesn't lead to permanent residency, they're able to obtain it through other visas. And we can discuss any particular case. I will answer the questions in 1 minute if any questions have been posted, because I can't see them yet. Lastly, EB5. EB5 is an immigrant visa. It allows foreign nationals of any country to come to the United States and obtain residency. There's 2 ways to do EB5. One is through direct investment, right? So you create 10 full-time jobs, you are actively involved in the business, you invest the $900,000 or the 1.8 million, and I'll explain the difference in a minute. But basically, you're setting up the business that you're going to manage, just like you are in the other visas. That requires 10 full-time job and active involvement. That's called direct EB5, and we do that a lot too. The other way to do EB5, it's something called, it's through a regional center. Okay, so regional centers are not, it's not the government. Regional center is not immigration. A lot of people think it is. It's not. Regional center is a private company that has obtained a special qualification from immigration to be able to obtain money from foreign investors in exchange for residency or EB5 visas. So it's important to do legal due diligence on the regional center. In the follow-up email that I mentioned, I'm going to include a link where I will show you, it's a link actually directly to immigration, and it will tell you all the regional centers that have lost their accreditation, meaning they were a regional center at one point and they no longer are. Why? Because maybe they were engaged in fraud, they didn't comply with the requirements, God knows, but now they're no longer qualified. So what happens with the people that did their investment through that regional center and now the regional center lost its accreditation? Well, you're going to lose your visa too because that center is no longer qualified. You need to be really careful. That is why it's important to do legal due diligence. Now, the regional center, they receive the money from the foreign investor, but then they give it to other private institutions, it could be government too, to use actually for whatever project they're doing. For example, you see buildings getting built or bridges or any other project. What happens is the investor gave the money to the regional center then gave it to those sponsored projects, and those are the projects that are getting built with EB-5 money, and in exchange, you obtain your residency. It's very important that the client understands that the attorney that represents those projects, it's not the client's attorney. Now, I do see a lot of those attorneys doing paperwork for the client investor as well, but I would see that as a conflict of interest, in my opinion, because now who do they really represent? Do they represent the project or do they represent the investor? You want to make sure that the clients, the investors, are separately represented, not with the attorney that represents the project, so that it's not a conflict of interest and they have the best interest of the investor at heart. Also, it's important that the client understands, and if your clients out there thinking about EB-5, that you are not buying anything really. You are investing in, like you would in the stock exchange, right? So you're not really going to own that building that they're building. It's not going to be yours in a way. You're simply kind of lending your money out. And when you obtain your EB-5 visa, it doesn't mean they're just going to be like, okay, here's your money back. It doesn't work like that. When and how you get your money back, it's going to be regulated by the investment documents that you're going to sign when you decide on a particular project. I highly advise the clients to review those with their investment financial advisor so that they understand what is the project, what are the risks involved, what is really going on. One of the requirements for this visa is that the money is at risk. So if the project guarantees that you're going to get your money back, then your money's not at risk, then it's not going to qualify for an EB-5 visa. Now, the great thing about doing investment through a regional center is that you yourself don't have to worry about managing the business or getting the employees. You don't have to worry about anything. You give them your money and you can just go on your way. And the project can be anywhere. You can decide to live here in South Beach and the project can be in Houston, Texas. No problem at all because you're not actively involved and you don't have to be. However, when you do direct EB-5, you have to be directing the business. So you have to live relatively close to where the project is. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense. And why is this important? Because when you're doing direct EB-5, right, the investment amount is usually 1.8 million. It used to be 500,000 in the good old days, or 1 million, not anymore. Okay, so as of November 21, 2019, the investment amount is 1.8 million or $900,000 in an area that is considered rural or with low employment. So if you're able to find an area that is a rural area or low employment, you might be able to get away with investing $900,000. Nowadays with COVID, there's a lot of areas that have low employment and we can probably help you establish that and we'll work together. I had some clients that wanted to say that they were, working, their business was going to be in the rural area, but they were going to live here in South Beach. It's not going to work. Nobody's going to believe that you're going to be driving, 6 hours every day to go and direct your business. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I understand we have, remote work and all these things, but keep in mind that immigration is not as advanced as we all would like it to be. And they have to regulate themselves with their regulations that will not say remote employment is okay. So for those reasons, if you're trying to qualify under a rural area or under a low employment area and you're doing direct investment, it's important that you live around that area. You don't have to live, half an hour, maybe an hour, it's fine, maybe an hour and a half, but don't get too creative because it's not going to work for immigration purposes. Now, this visa, we can apply right away, no problem, but it takes at least 2 years to process. So if you're here and you think you're going to remain here with your, visitor's visa because you applied for EB-5, it's not going to work. You're going to have to go back to your country because this applying for EB-5 doesn't give you status. It'll give you permanent residency 2 years from now, not right away. Now, the way that it works is you apply for the EB-5, right? Sorry, let me go to the next one. and they give you something called conditional residency. Conditional residency means that you still have to remove the conditions. It's not forever. So you get the conditional green card, conditional residency for 2 years. After those 2 years or before those 2 years, you want to remove those conditions. If you did direct investment, meaning you're in charge of reinvestment, then we have to show that you created the 10 full-time jobs and that the business is going forward. If you did it to a regional center in a project, then we have to show that the project went forward, right? That it hasn't, bankrupt, that they didn't stop building, that the regional center didn't lose its accreditation. And if we can show all that, then you're gonna be in good shape. Okay, so that is all, a little overview of investment